It's funny how the smallest spaces can hold the biggest secrets. Or maybe it isn't funny at all, maybe it's tragic. I never thought a twin-sized dorm bed in the middle of Ohio would become the place where my carefully built walls started to crumble. His name was Ethan. Mine is Daniel. We were supposed to be just two college freshmen thrown into the same room by a university housing algorithm that didn't care about chemistry, comfort, or the fragile ways boys learn to hide themselves. But the first night we had to share a bed. Something inside me shifted. The dorms at Weston University were notorious for their poor planning. 2 beds had been promised, but thanks to a paperwork mix-up, Ethan and I ended up with one. The RA swore it would be fixed within a week. That week stretched into months. And so, every night, the space between us grew smaller, even when neither of us dared to admit it out loud. I told myself I was fine with it. I told myself that pretending to be asleep while Ethan's breathing brushed against the back of my neck was harmless. But deep down, I knew I was lying not just to him, but to myself. The first time he moved closer, I froze. My pulse beat louder than the crappy air conditioner that rattled against the window. I felt the warmth of his arm brush mine, and suddenly the room seemed too small, too charged. I clenched my fists under the blanket, pretending not to notice. Pretending I wasn't burning from the inside out. "Sorry," he whispered, his voice low, almost guilty. His breath tickled my ear. I didn't respond. My body screamed to turn around, to meet his eyes, to confess everything I'd buried for years. But instead, I stayed still, the coward I'd trained myself to be. What I didn't expect was that he would keep moving closer, not that night only, but every night after. Sometimes it was subtle, his knee bumping mine under the sheets. Other times, it was bolder, an arm draped casually across me, as if he didn't notice the intimate line we were crossing. Each time, my heart shattered and rebuilt itself all over again. Because what if he didn't mean anything by it? What if I was just reading into things because I wanted them to be true? Days blurred into weeks, and life outside that dorm bed carried on like nothing was wrong. Ethan was popular, the kind of guy who drew people in without even trying. Girls laughed too loudly at his jokes in the dining hall. Guys pulled him into their circles like he belonged everywhere. And me? I was the quiet one, the careful one, the boy who carried secrets in his chest like they were weapons waiting to go off. But at night, everything changed. At night, when the world shrank to that narrow bed, Ethan was no longer the untouchable golden boy. He was human. Vulnerable. His breathing was uneven, sometimes catching when our skin brushed. His body tensed when I shifted too far away, as if the distance hurt him more than he wanted to admit. One night I couldn't take it anymore. I turned slightly, just enough to see his face in the dim light leaking from the hallway. His eyes weren't closed. He was watching me. The air caught in my throat. "Ethan?" I whispered, barely audible. His lips parted, like he was about to say something, but instead, he closed the distance. Not with words, but with presence. His forehead resting against mine. His hand trembling as it brushed the curve of my jaw. I wanted to pull away. I wanted to lean in. I did neither. I stayed there, frozen, with the weight of years of fear pressing down on me. The thing about secrets is that they don't just protect you. They imprison you. I had spent years convincing myself that liking boys wanting boys was wrong. That if anyone ever found out, I would lose everything. My family, my friends, my future. And yet, in that moment, with Ethan's breath mingling with mine, the prison bars seemed paper-thin. He whispered, "You don't have to keep pretending." My heart stopped. Pretending? Did he know? Had he always known? I pulled back just enough to look into his eyes, searching for mockery, for pity, for anything that could confirm my worst fears. But all I found was softness, a tenderness that undid me in ways I wasn't ready for. "Ethan," my voice cracked, and the words died before I could find them. He didn't push. He didn't rush. He just stayed there, close enough for me to feel the safety in his silence. But safety is a fragile thing. The next morning, everything was back to normal. Or at least that's what Ethan wanted me to believe. He joked around with his friends. He flirted absent-mindedly with the girl who sat next to him in math class, and he acted like the night before had been nothing more than a dream. Except it wasn't. Because when night fell again, and we lay down in that bed, the silence between us felt heavier than ever. This time, I didn't even try to pretend to sleep. And that's when it happened. He reached for my hand under the blanket. Slowly, cautiously, like he was terrified of rejection. Our fingers brushed, then intertwined. My chest ached with the force of holding back everything I wanted to say. In that quiet, Ethan squeezed my hand once. A question. I squeezed back. An answer. That was the beginning of the unraveling. Because the truth? I was already his even before I admitted it. The unraveling wasn't neat. It was messy, jagged, and full of nights where I wanted to scream from the confusion of it all. Ethan and I had crossed an invisible line, and once that happened, there was no way back to who we were before. Days became heavier. Every glance, every accidental touch in the hallway, carried a weight that felt like it could crush me. I wasn't used to being seen not like that. And Ethan? He seemed to straddle two worlds, one where he was still the golden boy everyone adored, and another where he was mine, only mine, in the quiet of our dorm room. But secrets never stay small. It started with whispers. The dorm wasn't big, and people noticed things. They noticed how we were always together. They noticed how I stopped avoiding his touch in public. They noticed how, on the nights we stayed up studying in the common room, Ethan's chair was always too close to mine. The rumors reached me before they reached Ethan. Words carved into bathroom stalls, muttered in the cafeteria, the kind of cruel, cutting speculation that makes your skin feel too tight. Faggots. Bet they share more than just notes. I thought Ethan would pull away. I thought he'd let the whispers push us apart. Instead, one night as we lay in that same bed, he pulled me closer than ever before. His arm wrapped around me, firm and steady, like a shield. They don't get to decide who I am, he whispered into my hair. But the thing was, they got to decide who I was. At least in my head. Years of shame, years of fear, don't dissolve just because someone holds your hand. The breaking point came one Friday night. A group of guys from our floor had been drinking, loud and careless. Ethan went along because that's who he was, always included, always wanted. I stayed behind, my stomach twisted with dread. Around midnight, the door slammed open. Ethan stumbled in, his smile wide but his eyes stormy. He sat on the edge of the bed, his hands shaking as he pulled off his jacket. "They know, Daniel," he said flatly. My blood ran cold. "What?" "They know about us." His voice cracked on the word us, as if saying it out loud made it real. I didn't confirm anything, but, God, they wouldn't stop asking. They wouldn't stop laughing. The silence stretched, unbearable. I wanted to tell him it would be okay, but the truth hung between us like smoke. Maybe it wouldn't be. Maybe this was the moment everything burned down. "I can't do this," I whispered. The words tasted like poison, but they spilled out anyway. "I can't be your secret, and I can't be your scandal. I'm not strong enough, Ethan." He turned then, his face breaking in a way I'd never seen. "Do you think I don't know that? Do you think I haven't been terrified every damn second since the first night I touched you? But you're all I want, Daniel. Don't you get that? You're it." My heart ached with the weight of it, because I wanted him too, God. I wanted him more than anything. But fear is louder than love when you've been carrying it for years. So I pushed him away. The weeks that followed were hollow. We still slept in the same bed because there was nowhere else to go. But the space between us might as well have been a canyon. I faced the wall, and he faced the ceiling, and we both pretended not to notice how far we'd fallen. But Ethan wasn't the type to give up. Slowly, relentlessly, he chipped away at the walls I'd rebuilt. He left notes in my textbooks. "Don't forget you're stronger than you think." He saved me a seat in every class. He defended me, loudly, when anyone whispered too close, and I hated him for it. I hated him because every act of kindness made it harder to keep pretending I didn't love him. Then came the night of the storm. The power went out across campus, plunging everything into darkness. Students filled the hallways with flashlights and nervous laughter. But in our room, It was just silence and rain beating against the window. Ethan lit a candle. Its small flame threw shadows across his face, softening the sharp lines of his jaw. He looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time all over again. "I'm done waiting, Daniel," he said quietly. "If you don't want me, if you really don't, I'll stop. But don't lie to me anymore. Don't lie to yourself." The words broke something in me, or maybe they healed it. I don't know. All I know is that for the first time, I didn't think. I just leaned forward and kissed him. It wasn't gentle. It was desperate, messy, years of fear and longing crashing together in the dark. His hands framed my face. Mine clutched his shirt, and the world outside ceased to matter. For once, it was just us, and it felt like coming home. After that night, things didn't magically get easier. People still whispered. Some friendships faded. My parents didn't understand when I finally told them. But for the first time, I didn't care as much, because I wasn't carrying the weight alone anymore. Ethan stood by me through it all. He was stubborn in the best way, refusing to let me sink back into the shadows I'd lived in for too long. And I learned that love isn't about being fearless, it's about being terrified and choosing it anyway. By the time spring came, the bed mix-up had long been fixed. A second bed was delivered to our dorm, neat and unused. We never touched it, because by then, there was no pretending. No space between us. Just two boys who had found, against all odds, that love could bloom even in the smallest, most unexpected places. Years later, when people asked how we met, Ethan always laughed and said, "A clerical error." But I knew the truth. It wasn't an error. It was fate disguised as bad housing policy. Fate that put us in the same bed, night after night, until pretending to sleep was no longer enough. And every time I looked at him, even then, I knew I'd choose that cramped twin bed, that fear, that risk, 1,000 times over if it meant I got to find him again. Because in the end, the smallest spaces really do hold the biggest secrets. And sometimes they also hold the kind of love that saves you. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.